Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast daily. Happy Monday. Happy day after Mother's Day. Hope all the moms out there who listen to the podcast had a tremendous Mother's Day. And those of you who aren't moms, hopefully had a good weekend as well. I'm Bill Landis. That's Berm. Here for another week of figuring out what to talk about when it comes to Ohio State football in the throes of the offseason. Berm and I had similar enough ideas, I think, that we're going to start diving into some position-specific discussions here over the next couple of weeks on the podcast daily. And Berm, in his infinite wisdom, suggested that we start first with the quarterbacks.
Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. It's because it's the most important position on the team, but it's also the easiest one for two people to just knock out without having a lot of random discussion as Austin gets back from his little vacation on Monday afternoon. On that note, folks, Roosters will be live on Tuesday afternoon at Olentangy River Road, in case you're looking for that on Monday. Bill, before we dive into that, how was George's first Mother's Day? Did he handle it well? Did he get your wife anything? Did you feel proud of his effort as a first-time son? You know, how do you gauge where he landed on Mother's Day numero uno?
Let's see. So we went out to Pittsburgh, where my wife is from, and spent the weekend there with her and her mother, my mother-in-law. It went fairly well. He was a little testy on Friday, but I think he really started to settle in to his first Mother's Day weekend. He only soiled 2 outfits over the weekend, which is pretty good for him. Yeah. So it's one more than I soiled over the
weekend. Well, it's all about closing the gap.
That's right. He's getting there. I'm just kidding. I didn't do that.
I'm just saying you might have had Permane brothers, and if that's the case, anything's possible.
Possible. I like good sandwiches, not bad sandwiches. No, he was good. He acquitted himself quite nicely for his first Mother's Day. Set the bar, I think, high for Mother's Days to come.
Permane brothers and Yingling is a pretty good way to make sure you end up changing your drawers. You know what I mean? It's
true.
Monday morning. We may as well just really get started with the weird stuff right away. I also wanted to touch base back to Friday's mailbag episode, folks, and acknowledge that we apologize for confusing Chariots of Fire with Ben-Hur. Ben-Hur had chariots in it, and Chariots of Fire was the movie with the guy that was running the 4-minute mile with that one song that I was trying to locate in my brain. So now that we've wiped away the unimportant things like mothers and correcting ourselves, let's talk about what's real important: quarterback play at Ohio State. First and foremost, Bill, we've talked so much about it over the last 3 months. What else can really be said that maybe changes the direction of the conversation or refocuses the narrative in any way? Is there anything?
Yeah, Ryan Day kept it fairly generic, I thought, throughout the course of the spring when we tried to ask him about that. And in years past, we've had opportunities to do sort of a post-spring, pre-summer kind of check-in. And I honestly don't know if that's going to happen this year or not. But if that were to happen, I think there are some things that Ryan Day could say that maybe shine a little light on where this thing is, whether that's acknowledging that Kyle McCord does have the lead that I think a lot of people perceive him to have, or frankly, if he doesn't, I think that is instructive as well. Maybe if we were to get a little more in depth with Ryan Day on sort of what he likes about each individual player, perhaps as a window into his line of thinking as we get closer to summer workouts and camp, and then ultimately the season. So I think there are some things that could happen. Whether or not they're going to happen, I'm not entirely sure. But I don't really come out of spring. I might be a little farther back maybe than some other people are on assuming that Kyle McCord is going to be the starter. If I had to pick him right now and say who thinks going to be a starter, I would pick him, because I think you probably have to. But it still feels kind of open to me. I don't know how it feels to you, but I kind of get the sense that you and Austin maybe feel a little more firmly than I do that this is all but sewn up.
I think that it is more likely that Kyle McCord has a fairly comfortable lead heading into summer than it is the other way. That doesn't mean that there's no opportunity for Devin Brown to overtake him or to become the guy. Again, Devin missed the last week of spring practice, and that certainly is unfortunate for him. It's bad for the fans too, who didn't get to watch what everyone wanted to see in the spring game. But I don't think that there's any like concrete plan. Like, this is it. This is the guy. It's over. We can't. Oh, nothing can change. I think that's premature. I think that if you look at this room altogether, the question is obviously the 2021 room, when you had CJ Stroud getting ready to make his first start, Kyle McCord on the roster as a true freshman, Jack Miller in his second year with CJ Stroud, and Quinn Ewers as a true freshman. That's the most talented room at one time that Ohio State's ever had, as far as just arms and stars and upside and all that. But when you look at this now with Kyle McCord and Devin Brown and the incoming Lincoln Keenholz, with Tristan Gebbia there as the seventh year guy who's sort of helping shepherd these young guys along, this is what Ryan Day has been waiting for. Yeah. Right? Like a room like this, where you have the veteran, you have a quarterback in his third year who's getting ready to be the starter. You have a backup who is in his second year that's a 5-star prospect, has a different skill set sort of than the guy that you're expecting to be the starter. And then you have a true freshman who can come in and learn, and not coming in a year early, not coming in 6 months early, coming in on time. Like, it just feels like this is the normalization of the quarterback room. And I think because of that, I would be shocked if Ryan Day in his mind, was willing to upset the apple cart too much at this juncture. You know what I mean? Like, this is what they've been building for, don't you think?
It absolutely is. Yeah. And there is you have to tread lightly. I think with that, to your point, you can't, listen, I would love it if Ryan Day would just come out and say what he thinks honestly about the quarterback position. But I understand why with this position in particular, it's hard to do that, especially given the time of the year we're talking to him. It might, I think as we get deeper into the year, I think more of that honesty will come out. But this is probably, I guess, short of having a returning starter, obviously. But aside from that, I think this is about as good as it gets in this era of quarterback, roster
management.
Building, management, like attrition, all that stuff. Like, to have two what I believe to be two viable starting options. I think a very low chance that you don't get to the fall with both of them. I think you get through this entire season with both Kyle McCord and Devin Brown. You have Tristan Gebbia, as you said, as sort of that coach in the room role that I think is always beneficial to have if you can find it. And then you have Lincoln Keenholz, who I don't think is coming in with any preconceived notions of I'm going to push for the job when I get on campus. I think he knows that he's got to develop for a year, maybe even 2 years, given where he played high school football. And it seems like maybe he's willing to do that. Otherwise, I don't think he would have come to Ohio State. So I think it is the ideal realization of what Ryan Day is trying to do. He's not going to be able to do it every year, but he was able to strike that balance in a number of different ways going into the season, which I think is great for this year. But I also think it sets Ohio State up about as favorably as it can be set up for the very near future as well. Like, I guess we can maybe talk about a little bit about of what we think might happen with Kyle McCord and Devin Brown after 2023, depending on how this goes. But even if the assumption is that one of those guys is not here in 2024 for whatever reason, you're still set up pretty good, because then you have either a returning starter, a guy stepping up who we all think is talented, and then you have Lincoln Keenholz, who would have been in the program for a year, and then Aaron Nolan coming in behind him. Like, I think it's really hard to stack the room the way that Ryan Day wants to by bringing in a guy every year. And if you're going to continue to operate that way, I don't think you can really ask for anything better than what they currently have.
Yeah, I think it's obvious that after the 2023 season, one of Kyle McCord or Devin Brown will not be there anymore. I just don't see any scenario that plays out where both of those guys are in this same conversation next spring. Like, whether Kyle McCord is off to the NFL as a first round pick who just, threw for more than 37.5 touchdowns, or whether or not he's the returning starter at Ohio State and Devin Brown has decided to leave, whether Devin Brown has found a way to overtake Kyle McCord and Kyle McCord decides to not return. I don't see any scenario where both of those guys come back next year. And, you're talking about the difficulty in roster management and quarterback room management. The idea of having a fourth-year guy and a third-year guy and a second-year guy and a first-year guy, like, not gonna happen. Like that's just that day is over. So for Ohio State, it will be in a perpetual state of chasing a grad transfer to fill in a role versus finding the best high school senior that they can find and how to meld all those guys together. We watched, Aaron Noland. Obviously, Ohio State had a commitment from Dylan Raiola, the number one player in the country, for 6 months. And even while they had that commitment in the, on the books, they're being self, aware enough to say, hey, let's at least have conversations around the country with other guys. And they start to see Aaron Noland, who now is moved up to I think the number 3 ranked quarterback in the country in the class of 2024. He just got an Elite 11 invitation over the weekend after dominating a camp down there in Atlanta, being picked for that camp over 5-star Michigan commit Jaden Davis, who, Jaden will probably still get invited to the Elite 11, but Era is the one that won the competition this weekend in Atlanta. Like, Ryan Day clearly knows what he wants and what he's doing at quarterback, but the ideal scenario of having everyone just returning and waiting their turn and, making lunches for each other and sharing lunch boxes, like that's just, it's not, it's never going to happen again. Like it's that world just will not exist. So it's about how do you put these guys in the best position to win? And you look at the comparison between what Kyle McCord or Devin Brown, whoever this year's starter is, walks into versus what next year's starter walks into, and it is a totally different world. So like whoever that guy is this year needs to strike while the iron is pretty freaking hot. You know what I mean? Because next year is I don't want to say like it's too early to get ahead of rebuild. Ohio State has never really had to rebuild, but next year is going to be a significant roster overhaul. And whoever the quarterback is next year, whether it's Devin Brown, whether it's Kyle McCord returning, whether it's, however that works, it's going to be an interesting time. So like this year is pretty big for the quarterback room to establish itself again, just as the place Ohio State and Ryan Day and Lincoln Riley and wherever he's coaching, like that is where the quarterbacks go. Right. So I don't think Lincoln Riley is going to go anywhere else next year, but you never know.
You never know. But someone could.
Where's Caleb Williams going next year?
Yeah, someone can come poach Lincoln Riley. You never know. Whoever the starting quarterback is this fall is operating in what I like to call the Marvin Harrison Jr. window. It's only going to be open for 1 year, and then things. Like they recruit receivers so well that who knows? Like we could think that Carnell Tate is Marvin Harrison Jr. a year from now, and maybe it will be.
There's a little guy named Jeremiah Smith coming in too.
Jeremiah Smith too, yeah. So I don't think they'll be hurting for offensive playmakers, but it does feel like there is an urgency with this array of skill talent around whoever the quarterback is. Which like I think I might have said before, maybe when we did the draft conversation for next year, like I'm not like super on alert for 1 year and done Kyle McCord, but if he's good, I think that contributes to it, because if you have a really good season with all those guys around you and then think to yourself like, oh, should I stay? Should I go? And then realize like, oh, all those guys are going also, maybe I should go too. I think that could be at play in that scenario. And if it is at play, then I think it does. I think ideally what Ohio State wants here, right, is probably a year of McCord, a year of Brown. Then you get into the Lincoln Holtz, Aaron Noland battle for the future beyond Devin Brown, right?
Right. If things are done the way that like it feels like they should be, then you have a year of McCord, a year of Devin Brown, a year of Holtz, a year of Noland. I mean,
just 1 year at a time.
This is the way it goes from now on. So it is crazy, but until somebody upsets the apple cart and like takes that job away from the guy that's a year ahead of him, that's where you're going to be looking. And I don't know that it's a bad thing for Ohio State necessarily, but I just don't think that you're going to see many guys in that, that world, even as good as Dylan Raiola is, and we're talking about him now, looking at Georgia and USC or, Nebraska still on the periphery, but I think it's going to be Georgia, in my personal opinion, at this point. But he goes in there, there's 3 5-star quarterbacks there already. So it's going to take somebody being that much better than the former 5-star to really upset that. And Ohio State is in a great position already in the class of 2025 with 5-star Bryce Underwood, the number 1 ranked player in the country in that class, our number 1 ranked quarterback from Belleville, Michigan. So, I mean, they're already looking ahead. There's Ryan Montgomery in Ohio. There's a lot of things that can happen. I still believe at some point Ohio State is going to find a way to get a 2-man quarterback class. They've been looking for a guy from Ohio for a while. The last one that signed with the Buckeyes from Ohio was Joe Burrow in the class of 2015. So we're going into 10 years without an Ohio quarterback on the roster, which is not ideal for the Buckeyes in the way you want to build a roster, because if you're looking for someone to gut it out and say,
well, they had Gunnar Hoke.
Well, I'm signed out of high school. My apologies.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Just for the person in the comments.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you. I appreciate that. They did have Danny Clark committed for 3 years. I know. But the reality here is that you look ahead and you want someone that's going to say, hey, I'm going to be there for the long haul. I'm going to be there to develop. Maybe that's Ryan Montgomery. He's put in a lot of work and gotten very, doing a lot of good things and getting a lot better. He's trying to prove that he's that, elite quarterback that can be the face of a program. So still got, a couple months ahead of them to really figure that out. But the bottom line is that the quarterback room is just going to be this way from now until forever. I just don't see it changing with college football the way it is. I mean, having 4 guys that are all like, oh, I can't wait to stay here and I'll just sit and bide my time. That just feels like it's never going to be that way again.
I have 2 questions for you as the man who is in tune with all things recruiting. And I'll ask them one at a time because I hate when people ask 2 questions at once. The first is, what do you think the likelihood is of them actually being able to sign 2 in the same class?
I think one of them has to be from Ohio. Or, if you go back in time, the last time Ohio State signed 2 in a class, I guess, was 2015. But one of them was Torrance Gibson.
Yeah.
And he was everyone knew he was going to be a wide receiver down the road. He wanted to play quarterback. But there were years. I mean, Cardale Jones and Braxton Miller originally signed in the same class in the class of 2011. Cardale didn't come in until a year later, but it used to be fairly standard. A couple times in the Jim Tressel era that happened, but nowadays it's just very hard to see that working out. Unless what happens is you have in a class like the 25 class where you have not just Ryan Montgomery, but Tavian St. Clair at Bellefontaine and now Jamison Kitna down at Lakota East. You've got a couple rising juniors in the state of Ohio. That makes it interesting. But because the Devin Brown, the Kyle McCord, the Lincoln Keenholz and his situation being so unique, you could, if things go poorly for Ohio State, you could see a scenario heading into 25 where like it's just Aaron Nolan on the roster. Yeah, and then how do you figure it out from there? So they were pretty close to that. If we talked about this back in October and November, when at that point Ohio State, if the conversation is CJ Stroud leaves, Devin Brown becomes the starter in 23. And then Kyle McCord transfers. So then you only have Devin Brown and whoever the 23 signee is. And at that point, there was no 23 signee. So like, it's like, oh, it is borderline precarious almost at all times, like by default. So you have to find a guy that's willing to just settle in and say, I want to play quarterback at Ohio State. I love Ohio State and I don't want to leave. I'm not interested in all of the stuff that comes with being a big time college quarterback right away. It's rare.
And then my second question is this. So Ohio State has found a way to stack CJ Stroud, Kyle McCord, Devin Brown, Lincoln Keenholz, who ended up being a fairly highly rated recruit, and now Aaron Noland. Do you ever envision a time when Ohio State just like won't be able to do that? Like they're going to have to go to like the every other year approach that like a Clemson or even like I think Lincoln Riley does that too most years.
Lincoln Riley had tried that for a while. I don't think he's into that anymore. Obviously, he just signed Malachi Nelson in the class of 2023 after bringing in Caleb Williams at Oklahoma in 2021. He skipped to 22 and then took the new job. And then all of a sudden he brings in Caleb Williams, signs Malachi Nelson, trying to sign Dylan Raiola. I mean, I don't know. I think that at a place like Ohio State, where the expectations are so high, and maybe this will change at USC as they get into the Big Ten and people actually demand that they play defense and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. you can't just play a freshman quarterback all the time. Like it's not ideal. So that is not what Ohio State wants to do. I can tell you that for sure. Like the goal is to sign one every year, and not signing one every year puts you in a position like Clemson a year ago where you're like, what do we do? We have no idea what our quarterback situation is. And that turns, Clemson, who plays really good defense, had no shot at a national championship a year ago because they just had no plan at quarterback once DJ Uiagalelei didn't pan out. So
that's the danger.
Yeah, if that one guy doesn't hit, then all of a sudden you are back to mediocre. And Clemson now is in a point program wise where if you're 10-2, or 9-3, it's mediocre. But when was the last time Ohio State was 9-3? I don't think fans will accept that for very long.
Yeah, and I think Clemson's will kind of change too. Didn't they took Cade Klubnik, and then didn't they take the Chris Vizina kid in the class right after him? So maybe even they're realizing that you can't leave that gap year to chance because, well, I don't know. Maybe you can now in the transfer portal era, but Clemson also isn't like super willing to take transfers either. So if you're not willing to do that, then I think you have to be willing to take a quarterback every year.
Yeah, and on the flip side, you look at Alabama, and they signed Ty Simpson in 22. They signed 2 guys in the class of 2023. They already have a 5-star commit in Julian Sain in the class of 2024, but yet we're still offering Aaron Noland and still trying to recruit a second quarterback in this class. So everyone has a different approach. My personal belief is that you have to sign a quarterback every class, period. And it seems like Ryan Day's approach is sign the absolute best quarterback you can every year, and whatever else happens, screw it. If guys want to leave, okay, we'll just sign the next best guy. Like that's the way. I think that's the way you have to do it. I just don't think. And as long as Ryan Day is there and the quarterback position is making Ohio State so much money, accolade wise, and getting so much attention for what those guys are doing, recruits are not afraid of it, and that's what you actually have to bank on, is that recruits, the top level, the elite guy, the best of the best, is never afraid of the guy in front of him ever. Yeah. And he's never worried about the guy behind him. So, and sometimes that's a player who's physically just that much better than other guys. Sometimes it's a guy like Lincoln Keenholz who's like, hey, I don't care if Dylan Raiola is committed. I don't care if CJ Stroud's still there. I'm still going to Ohio State. Screw you. Like, I think that, you can find those guys every once in a while. And then you have to hope that their physical abilities match up to that elite competitive, mindset that they have. And all you got to do is flip on Keenholz's tape, football, basketball, baseball, whatever, and you can see that he's an elite athlete. So the room is in good hands, but it does feel like heading into next season, like it's on that teeter totter.
Yeah, it does, but I also the 2 positions where I will probably always give Ohio State the benefit of the doubt are quarterback and receiver. So like I don't worry about it too much.
It's funny though, man. Like it's hilarious, Bill, because 10 years ago, those are the 2 positions people are like, well, I don't know. What the hell is going on with those guys? No clue. Cannot figure it out. Yeah. You're signing Kenny Guyton, who was only other offers from Prairie View A&M, and you're like, what in the hell are we doing? And then all of a sudden, Kenny Guyton's winning games for you and setting program records with 6 touchdowns in the first half. As long as Brian Hartline and Ryan Day are in Columbus, certainly that's easy not to worry about. But the simple truth is that right now, Ryan Day's been there 6 years. Corey Dennis has been there, 7 years, 8 years. Todd Fitch as the assistant, analyst or whatever you want to call it, doing a great job for Ohio State, working with that room. Like, when does Corey Dennis start to look for another opportunity? Does Ryan Day have to find another quarterback coach? Ryan Day obviously is still sort of the de facto quarterback coach in a lot of ways for Ohio State. As he continues to look at ways to decentralize, his role, does he have to find someone else? I mean, we looked at what happened with Lincoln Riley, Dabo Swinney and Garrett Riley, and hiring him this offseason to bring in a different approach. I don't think that's something Lincoln Riley wanted to do at Clemson. I mean, it seems like he's been pretty like, this is my quarterback room. This is how I'm going to do things. And now what? I mean, eventually there is going to be some changing, and I wonder how long it takes until that happens. Because for Ohio State, that's one room that's had a lot of stability for a couple of years now.
Yeah, I think that is the delicate situation for Ryan Day moving forward, because for all of the discussions we've had about him needing to take more of a CEO approach. This program is what it has become over the last 5 years because of how good of a quarterbacks coach he is. So, and I think the natural lean for someone when you're really good at something, like you don't want to hire somebody else to do it, like you'll just do it. So, I'll be very interested to see how that plays out. I think there's a way for Ryan Day to become a little more hands off with the offense and the play calling without maybe losing that touch he is the thing that makes this such a destination for quarterback prospects, and like Ohio State can't lose that, and obviously Ryan Day knows that, but he will have to figure out how to balance all of that as he does morph into more of a CEO role. I want to as we do all these position groups, I want to make sure to maybe try to hit on this in each episode at some point, and that is whether or not we feel better, worse, or the same about this position group than we did going into spring ball. Let's use that as a jumping off point. So
not coming off of last year. Yeah, not coming off of last year.
Not coming off of last season. Yeah.
Better. I feel better about it. I think we saw a lot out of Kyle McCord and what we got to watch practice wise to make you realize that he's emerging as a leader in the program. Devin Brown, there's a lot of conversation last year about his sort of it factor. But you can't really quantify that until you see it. And
right.
I think it's obvious. And Lincoln Holtz is the same guy. And then the decision to hire or recruit Aaron Noland and go all the way in on him, and to watch as he elevates his game, after that commitment and becoming that national prospect that everyone was expecting him to be. I think you have to feel better. And I want to go back to the previous point. Ryan Day is the reason the quarterbacks come to Ohio State, but Corey Dennis does a really, really great job for Ohio State in recruiting and relationship building. And so that duo has been really good. And for people who 3 years ago are like, well, why would Ryan Day hire Urban Meyer's son-in-law to be his quarterbacks coach? The answer to that is very simple. Ryan Day knew that Corey Dennis would coach quarterbacks the way that Ryan Day wanted. After the Mike Yurcich experiment in the 2019 season, Ohio State realized that, okay, that's not the way they want to do things, that where you have a coach who's going to kind of butt heads with the head coach on philosophy or practice ideas or whatever. So that's where Corey Dennis has been a really big plus for Ohio State. And it is hard to imagine who do you find to do that if you're Ryan Day, as you said, try to be more of a CEO, but you also can't really put yourself in a position where you surrender the power or the allure of what you do best. Sorry, I wanted to just throw in that final point. As far as your perception post spring to now, where are you?
Yeah, I'm better as well, especially when you do factor in, because I'm trying air committed in April, right? So like we entered the spring off of the Dylan Raiola decommitment, and you're not just thinking about the present, you're thinking about the future, and the future looked a little murky. It looks much more solid now. I find myself a little bummed, I think, that we didn't get to see Devin Brown in the spring game. Like I wish we would have had a better comparison of the two side by side, because like we watched a lot of practice, but it was hard in practice. I think they get a gauge of where they were because of some of the struggles on the offensive line and the way some things were structured. I think Ryan Day and Corey Dennis and Todd Fitch got what they needed out of that, but us as media members, I think, wish we could have seen a little bit more. So that doesn't make me feel worse about the situation. I think Ohio State, at the beginning of spring ball, I thought they had two guys who could start. I still feel like they have two guys who can start now. I still think it's a competition, but no matter the choice, I think it'll be a good one. And now also the future looks a lot brighter with Aaron Noland in the mix, and like the continued sort of development that you see as just an athlete from Lincoln Holtz too. So I like where they're at, slightly more than I did at the beginning of spring.
Yeah, I think from just one thing, I like, if I could do one thing different, I think Ohio State would have just loved to have Holtz in camp in January.
Yeah.
Just, as I said earlier, like, he's not there a year early, is not 6 months early, whatever. Anytime a guy can enroll early, it's good for him and the program. So I think by enroll early, I mean like in your normally scheduled recruiting class, not a year ahead of time, which threw a lot of things into whack. Out of whack. I think it's going to be a little bit wild. But yeah, I mean, other than that, you can't be happier about a position. You'd like to have a returning starter, I guess. But other than that, how do you argue? What quarterback room in the country would you trade for Ohio State's? There's Texas has an argument that you'd have a conversation if you look top to bottom. And that's it.
USC. I think USC probably does.
Well, I mean, Caleb Williams at the top is so much better than everyone else. I'm not sure that it matters who's behind him.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Yeah.
But
if you analyze it top to bottom, I think you're right. Yeah.
It's Ohio State and Texas. Pretty much that's it. And the guys at Texas with Quinn Ewers playing a lot last year may have a slight argument to be a favorite over Kyle McCord at this point, even though they were obviously both in Columbus and one's still there and one's not. But that's not because of anything that happened on the field. So other than that, I mean, how do you argue with where they're at, So
yeah, I mean, if you could have a returning starter every year, like in the NFL, I guess, but at some point you cannot have it. That goes away in college football, unfortunately.
Unless you're Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, you can play all that football, don't get a degree. How about that?
Do we believe that? Do we believe that that's true or not? I
don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That Twitter account that shared it. I have no idea.
But this has been percolating over the last 2 weeks or so. People wondering if Stetson Bennett graduated. And Bill, should we be honest with people and say that we did hear rumblings back in December that he was academically ineligible? Should we be honest about that? Or should we just pretend we didn't hear that those were potential concerns? Because I think we should probably just tell people that there was some rumor milling at the time that he may not have been eligible to play in the Peach Bowl. Now, does that matter? No. I mean, come on, it's sour peaches or whatever. But it is weird that was we did hear those things being bantered. And now to see this discussion 5 months later saying he didn't even graduate after 7 years in college feels like a little awkward. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Georgia won the game on the field. Cool. I understand how this is going to go in the comments. I really do. But it is weird, right?
Yeah. I don't know if we should say that. I guess we'll just have to
let's table it.
Let it percolate a little bit, and then we'll decide whether or not that's something that should be said out loud, and then see how it goes. Surely
we'll table that for now.
Yeah, surely that won't blow up into something much larger. Okay, that was a quarterback discussion on the podcast daily that took a bit of a turn. And,
it was a rumor. That's all we're saying. Okay, rumors don't mean that they're true. I'm just saying that sometimes where there is smoke, there is fire, and in this case, that rumor was a rumor that now seems to be rumoring some more based on what's been rumored about not having a degree after 7 years.
Yeah, smoke, fire, and no diploma. Okay, all right.
Maybe it got burned up in the fire.
Never know. All right. Thank you for listening to the podcast daily. We hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday. Hope you have a great start to your week. We'll be back to talk to you on Tuesday. See ya.